Their bottom line is through interest. Credit card interest, car loan interest, mortgage interest, fee income. When you come and you got to pay $500 to get a car loan, that goes to the bottom line.
Gotcha.
So if you can't lend any money with deposits because everybody's pulled that money out, your bank fails.
Welcome everybody to the Speak Your Life podcast. My name is Andre Llewellyn. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, especially if you're on YouTube. We are really growing our YouTube channel, and we want not only everybody to hear us, but to see us and see who's talking, see the voices behind the conversations that you hear each and every episode that you tune into. So anyways, with all that being said, we have a very special guest in the building today. He's originally from California, and he goes back and forth between Alabama and Atlanta, and he's been a senior vice president of a bank. I'm not gonna say the name of it, but you know where it is, and you've probably been there. But anyways, please welcome Brother Damien Gilbert to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate you,
man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So if you were to give me like a scale of 1 to 10 about how are you feeling, like everybody says good, but just like if you give it a 1 to 10, like it's more accurate.
1 to 10.
1 to 10.
How many people are watching? Depends.
Depends. A couple of hundred.
Okay. Man, I feel good. I mean, I feel 9, 10.
9, 10. Okay. All right.
You make it super comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's a great space.
Yeah.
I'm super comfortable. There's not a audience studio. There's a few people around.
We want to make you feel like at ease.
Yeah. I feel like I'm at home.
Yeah. Sometimes I have people like come in and watch on the sidelines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but it may make the guests feel nervous. Sometimes it depends on who it is. So that's what I do.
That's what I do.
That's right.
So I'm good.
That's right. So that's good. I'm glad that you're feeling good. 9 out of 10. So, anyways, you ready to speak your life, man?
Absolutely.
All right. So, in this podcast, we like to, ask people the question of like, because there's two things that are important in life: the day you were born, the day you knew why. So, if you were to give us like a, kind of like a 5-minute summary of like. Kind of like the era that you grew up in, and how that some things that were key in influencing you to become who you are and why, and then the day you understood why you were meant to be on this earth.
Brother, I love that question, man. Listen, I think what you're doing, first of all, is amazing, making sure that you're speaking truth and getting that information out, and appreciate you having me. But I think to your question, I always tell a little bit of a story about kind of where, and you asked the era I come from. I'm a latchkey kid. I grew up in the 80s.
Okay.
Came of age in the early 90s, went to college in the 90s. We talked about Freaknik a little bit earlier, which kind of changed my life. Hence, I've been in the South ever since.
Yeah.
But starting with my why, I grew up, again, a latchkey kid, grew up, and I remember vividly. I tell this story when I talk to anybody. I remember vividly growing up in an apartment complex. Some say, project. We don't call them, but I grew up in an apartment complex in Cali, and community was there. My aunts, my cousins, we all were there. And then I remember I was 5 years old, and my mom said, "We're moving."
Yeah.
She said, "We're moving." I just didn't know what that meant, but I remember vividly driving. It was a rainy. I mean, I literally still can feel the air. It was a dark night. It was raining profusely, and I was 5. Right, I'm going down the street, and we didn't have trees just like lining the streets. Yeah, my mom was driving us down this street. And there was trees, and I remember it being dark. And at that time, I was like, I just watched King Kong and Godzilla, and I'm like, I'm thinking this is, my mind was racing. So we get out of the car. It's nighttime. We get out of the car, and we walk into this. It's a house. We walk in, and I'm like, man, it's empty, and I'm looking around, and my mom says, "Go find your room." So. I'd been living in apartments since I was born. I was 5. I vividly remember the feeling of walking into a house. I'm 5. I remember walking into the house and getting my own room, kind of just all the space. My mom and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment growing up, or two bedroom, in the apartment, and then we went into a 3-bedroom. It was still small, but it was a house. Yeah. So I remember that vividly. Fast forward, I grew up in that house. Was excited. I mean, I met my friends. I had my first girlfriend, basketball. I mean, I did everything in that. That was my center of my universe. Our houses in Cali, as you know, are very close. So, I mean, I remember getting up on my roof when people come. I mean, that's where that was my refuge. I'd hang out on top of my roof, just kind of relax. So again, my house was everything. There was an alleyway in the back. So I'm giving you this story because fast forward, my mom worked. It was, again, just me and my mom. I went off to college, came south and went to college, went through college, got a business degree, finance degree, and I'm 23 at this point. Okay, this is where it all comes together. I'm 23 at this point, and I'm seeing my coworkers, they're buying their first homes, and so I said, man, I went to college, I'm about to buy, I'm a banker, I need to buy a house. So I go ahead and get approved, and then it just starts happening quick. I get a real estate agent, and so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a banker, so I called my mom. I said, Mom, man, I know you're proud of me. I went through school and all this, but the one thing we ever talked about was buying a house. So I'm about to buy this house. I'm nervous. I'm always projected confidence. I'm college educated. My mother wasn't, so so I projected this confidence. But I said, Mom, I'm lost right now. And I said, tell me about your experience. She said, what experience are you talking about? She literally asked me, I said, when we bought the house. She said, baby, I don't own this house now. She never owned the home. So it's two things, right? I'm buying a house. I remember the memories of being in a house. I just automatically assumed that everybody owned their home. Wow. My mother never owned the home. So I'm calling my mom, the person that I'm most revered. The house that I grew up in had these memories, these life-changing moments. Yeah. We didn't even own it. Wow. So you think about it. This is Cali. Think about rent. I'm 5. Yeah. 23, 24. My mother never owned the home. So every month, my mom paid rent religiously. Wow. We lived in this house, and so that's when I realized. I got into commercial banking right out of college. I realized at that point, that's my why. My why is to educate. It wasn't because my mother, as I started peeling back the onion, I said, Mom, why don't you own it? Well, I never thought about it. And, I didn't ever wanted to. And my mother is not a dumb woman. My mother's a very smart woman. She just said, I just never thought I've got shelter and all that. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, my mom's got bad credit. There's something going on. My mom's always worked. She was never laid off. She always worked. She worked in the hospital. Okay. So I said, Mom, we're gonna help you buy a house. So I actually buy my house before my mom. Yeah. So I helped my mom buy the house that I grew up in. Come to find out, lady had 700 plus credit scores. There was no issue. She had money in the bank. She just didn't know the value of home ownership, right? It wasn't passed down. That legacy of ownership and owning property wasn't one that we talked about in our family. My grandmother owned her home in Mobile, Alabama, but my mom in California. It just wasn't something that was endemic to our family. So that's my why. I realized at that point at 23 that it was my time, to start educating people. I've been doing this again. I've been doing mortgages, been in the mortgage industry since I was 23 years old. Wow. And that's what changed my life. And I can tell you, I will die probably doing this same thing. Because I get up every single morning, I'm excited because every person that I talk to, every situation, every group or every church I go speak to, there's always a story. It's always a story. I was having dinner with somebody yesterday, and she said, what do you do? What do you do? I said, I'm a life changer. She said, what do you mean? She said, what's your job? I said, I change lives. I said, and I kind of explained to her, I said, I'm a banker I'm just a vessel to be able to give money, but I change lives. I said, everybody that's ever owned a home has a story like me, or has grown up in a home. You remember. People that are listening, they can remember the memories in the home, either the Thanksgivings or the holidays or your first girlfriend coming over, you sneaking somebody in and out, whatever it is, everybody remembers it, right? That's life. Home is life, and so I change lives. I've helped people buy homes that get to create memories. I remember bringing my sons home, watching them grow up in the homes, their friends coming in, them growing up, them bringing girlfriends over, prom, first car in the garage, all this. These are life-changing moments that I've experienced in the home that I bought. So every time somebody buys a home, it's changing their life. Somebody's life. It's impacting them some way. It's creating memories that they will never forget.
Wow.
So that's my why.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
And so that was a very positive and uplifting story. But on the flip side, how has the inability to buy a house for so long in this country, how has that negatively affected people like us?
Man, that is I try to, I'm a big history guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big reader.
Me too.
And you look at the legacy of banking, legacy of finance in our folks. And I'll just tell you, we have a culture, and I know growing up with my grandmother, she's deep South, never talked about finance, never talked about banking, nothing. You don't talk about that at the table. That's been put inside of us because nobody ever taught us, man. We were locked out for years. I brought a book today. I always bring it with me everywhere I go. I don't say it's my Bible, but it's close for my financial reading for black folks to understand that what has happened, the reason why culturally we don't talk about money, it was systematic. It was law. It was law to keep us out of banking. You think about that for several years, hundreds of years, where we didn't have the ability to leverage. And we'll talk about that later. What that means is be able to borrow money, have that 100,000 turn into 200,000, sell and take that and open up a business.
Yeah.
Send your children off to college. Again, this was law. This was law. So when you say how's that affected us? Well, I mean, we have heavy debt. We're heavily debted folks because we didn't have the ability to have that passed down, have equity, have money passed down. We haven't gone through. And so when I think about, what has that done for us? It's really hurt us. I think my industry has a lot of things that we got a major responsibility. And so I talk about it. I'm honest with it. And that's why I feel like that's why I was put here, because I have a deep understanding and appreciation for history. I have a deep respect for banking and what it can do. I know what it's done for me. I know what it's done for my children. And I know it's done for people around me. Watching somebody, and I'll tell this quick story and I'll wrap it up. So I got a buddy of mine, we were probably 26, 27. I was the guy, I was young hotshot banker. I'm helping to put all my. I felt like I was always the responsible one. People say that, but all my friends started coming to me because I had bought my first house when I was 23. So they started 26, 27. Man, tell me about. So I started getting my friends into homes. Yeah. One of them now, fast forward, I'm mid 40s, and I remember him buying his first house and how hard it was. This guy had graduated from Tuskegee. He was, an adjunct professor at one of the universities, and he just having trouble. He was going to different banks. Don't know why he didn't come to me first, but finally came to me, got him in his first house, $75,000. He was overjoyed. He wasn't married at the time, finally got married, had kids, helped him buy his second house. That $75,000 house that he bought, sold it for $200,000. So that's $125,000 of equity he took, put onto another house. Yeah. Talked to him again. This is a 20-year relationship that I've known him. 2 years later, a year ago, he called me and he just said, thank you. I said, thank you for what? He said, man, I'm building my dream home. And I would have never had the ability to stair step from a $75,000 home over 20 years ago, gain equity,
Yeah.
Again, selling a house at 200 that he borrowed only 75,000. The value had risen. Taking that money, put in another home in a better neighborhood.
Yeah.
That value grew. So he's building, over in Birmingham, Alabama, over a $500,000 home and putting down 250,000. He's
Wow.
putting on half the equity. So what does that do to his family? When he decides to sell that property, what's he going that home gets passed down to his kids, or he can use that money to send them to college.
Yeah.
He's changed the trajectory of his life. So I always say that, there's times where you realize, and people, they call you and thank you. I see generations now buying homes. I see friends, children calling me to help them buy homes now. So it's rewarding, and I've been definitely blessed in this industry for doing what I do. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so this book that you were telling me about earlier, what are some things that you learned, or reasons why somebody should read it and check it out?
Yeah, it's the Color of Law. It's a gentleman by the name of Richard Rothstein, and again, I try not to be highly emotional about race relations, which it is a highly volatile issue, and it's affected and impacted every black person in this country, right? Since we've been here since 1619. But with the Color of Law basically breaks down the systems in place. Deed restrictions. What deeds are is what allows when somebody moves into a neighborhood. On the deed it says you can't have another neighbor within 50 feet or whatever that is. There were deeds that were in city of Atlanta. I mean, he details parts of Atlanta where there's communities where because Bob doesn't want you in the neighborhood is one thing.
Yeah.
But when the city of Atlanta or the state of Georgia or the United States says you can't live in a neighborhood, it's bigger than an individual. It was systematic.
Yeah.
There were certain places where the federal government, not banks, but federal government said, hey, we are going to insure loans only in certain neighborhoods for people of color. Or we're not going to finance if people of color are close to these neighborhoods. So what does that do? It created mass density of neighborhoods for especially black and brown folks because they couldn't spread out. They couldn't live next door to Bob.
Or
Because
suburbia,
because it was law, right? So think about this. FHA, which again, I think it's a great product, and obviously things have changed dramatically with Federal Housing Administration. That is a loan product that is insured by the federal government, Housing and Urban Development, that allows people to purchase homes with little money down, okay? Well, FHA, in this book, he details this. This is not me talking, but this is the research. Up until 1958, black folks could not get an FHA loan. What does that mean? You or I, same house on the same block. Bob buys his house. He only has to put down, he buys a $10,000 house at the time and puts down $50, okay? We had to put down 20%, okay? We had, so think about that. We were underemployed. We couldn't get assistance to buy a home. We had to come up with money to put down. And a lot of times we couldn't do that. So what did that do? That locked us out, right? For years and years. So I've learned a lot about redlining and how, again, that was systematic. When we look at the hoods that we think of, the hoods in every neighborhood in America, these were created part and parcel by the federal government, right? Again, you come back, the federal government's ameliorated a lot of these issues, have come back and said, look, we know that was wrong. FHA clearly knew that was wrong. They've come back, they fixed that. But the impact of being locked out, of being able to have financing to build equity, build real tangible assets for a community was big. The last thing that I'll say is in this book, VA, Veterans Administration, right? We all have people in our family that are veterans.
Yeah.
That, World War I, World War II, the presidential administration, they created VA loan. It's a GI Bill where after they come back from war, they get money to housing or put their kids through school, whatever. 1.1 million black men came back from war between the World War I and World War II. Could not use a VA. Now, they fought for our country. They died, and some of them risked their lives for our country, but they came back. 1.1 million black men could not get a loan through the VA because the VA said by law that this program is not for African Americans or people of color. So you think about that. I'm a veteran. I've fought for my country.
Risked your life.
Fought next to one of my white buddies. He comes home, gets to move into a house with his wife, no money down. Our family had to come up with 20%. Well, if you just come back from war and you're trying to find a job, where you gonna get 20%?
Yeah.
Your wife wasn't typically working, right?
Yeah.
So the money you were getting was either from the military, and if you're no longer in the military and you can't get a job, what you gonna do? Right? So now you keep creating these projects, these slums, because people are now having to live with family and do all. These were systematic things that have been created. So I always get angry when I hear people saying, "Well, why are they killing each other, or why are we in these spaces?" This is an outgrowth of people being on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
This is not endemic to the nature of black and brown people.
Yeah.
So there are things now that are addressing those issues. There are some communities that are addressing, when you start talking about retribution and trying to make sure that you're addressing those issues. Banks have come step forward. You have a lot of banks that said, look, in certain neighborhoods we realize that we have to address housing and help people buy homes. So down payment assistance, certain loan products for certain dense areas. That banks have kind of stepped up and started. Are banks absolved of any? We're not.
No.
But things are starting to move where banks realize they're talking about the issues and they're addressing them through banking products to help ameliorate the problems. So,
wow.
But that's what I learned in the book. I mean, redlining, we could talk about that for days.
Yeah.
But he does a great job of taking the emotion of race, the emotion of redlining, and giving you tangible and tactical things and pointing to companies, pointing to the government, saying, hey, you had a responsibility in addressing some of these issues today. Because what's going on today, the lack of housing, the disparity of housing. Again, I always quote this. When you start talking about the house from prior to the Great Depression, around 40% of black folks own homes. Okay, 70% to 72% of our white counterparts own homes prior to the Great Depression. Okay, so if you see 10 black folks, 4 of them own homes. You see 10 white folks, 7 of them own homes. Fast forward to 2022, okay, most recent statistics. Guess what those numbers are?
For black people?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably like 18 to 20%.
It's the same. It's the exact same.
Oh, it's the same.
So you think about it. When I think about it, I'm like, man, I see my friends buying homes. I bought a home. I mean, but the numbers are still exactly the same.
Wow.
Pre-Great Depression, all the gains, civil rights, fair housing, where they've made it.
They didn't do anything. Didn't change anything, right?
It's exposed it, but the lack of understanding of, and to your, going all the way back to your original question of why haven't we, why aren't folks, or what is banking, when you start thinking about banking, why are we still kind of behind? Again, this was systematic. You think about it, it's not even 100 years yet. We're just now making strides. So Again, not a big sexy topic, but
Yeah.
it's real and it impacts us all, man. It definitely impacts us all.
And it's kind of interesting that it's written from a perspective from a Jewish brother.
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, you know, it's part of their culture that they're, you know, when it comes to finances, and it's like they know what to do. They know how, you know, how to pass that on to their kids and their kids' kids.
Absolutely.
And so it's just interesting that, you know, you have a book that's written from a different perspective, from a maybe more of an outsider's perspective when it comes to redlining. Because I'm not sure how it affected Jews, but I know for sure it affected blacks back in those days.
Yeah. Jews, Irish, if you're from Ireland, I mean, there was deeds saying if you're Irish descent.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't live in a particular neighborhood. Jewish, I mean, same thing. So but the impact to black folks was predominant. It's super impact. You know, again, I hate to get into all the history, but I mean, we came over here with nothing. Right?
Yeah.
We've been running this race for a long time, and you think about from 1619 to 1958, it was law. We could own property, but after 1865, we were able to own property, but you had to come up with the capital, right? You know, or you finally got the capital to own a home, build a thriving community, and then Tulsa comes along.
Yeah.
Auburn Avenue in Atlanta comes along and gets
Rosewood
burned down. Rosewood.
Yeah.
So again, there's a rich history, of black folks being impacted by lack of finance, and so again, I always talk to young folks when I go out and I do mentoring with a group, 100 black men, and so I always try to talk about why finance matters. You know, I talk to my sons. If I bring my sons in here right now, one's in just freshman in college, another one's a junior, and I ask them about credit, they're gonna tell you how many credit cards they should have. They're gonna be able to tell you exactly what, if when dad passes, what equity means, how that's going to be passed down to them. They understand that there's a trust, there's a will. And I always do it with a side eye, like, man, don't be killing me off early.
Yeah.
But
living trust.
Right, living trust. It's a living trust.
Yeah.
But I try to make sure that they understand just a rudimentary understanding of just finance. One of my sons may never be in banking, but I need them to understand. We need to have a intimate understanding. Be able to, if you're not into finance and dad is, at least you need to have be able to be comfortable having the conversation. Yeah. Hey, dad, what's this mean? Like my son is all into crypto and all that, which is, again, I don't really understand, but he does. He's 17 years old, right? So we need to. He's comfortable having those conversations around finance and what that means. We have to do a better job of having those conversations with our friends, talking about what we're doing, what are you investing in? Man? We need to talk about that, because we culturally we have it. Now, the your generation that is something that you're more open and you're more comfortable. It's ubiquitous. It's all over IG, TikTok, all of this. I talk to my son. He gives me finance advice from TikTok. There's a little bit more. I mean, times are changing, which I'm super excited about that, because you give us the ability to shine and be part of this system. There's no telling where we could be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, when you talk about like trust and stuff like that, like really quick, it makes me think of Aretha Franklin, and when she passed, as rich as she was from all the music she's made and all the concerts she's done, there was like some disputes amongst the family about where's this money going, where are these properties going. I don't know if there was a trust or a will. It was just you gotta go through probate court, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. How do people avoid that?
How do they avoid
how do they avoid just getting into that dysfunction and like what's the point of setting up a trust now instead of waiting till later?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's one thing is gaining. We having a conversation about finance has always been, again, culturally something that we haven't done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why would we even talk about trust and passing down stuff? We weren't even gaining equity or having anything to pass down, right?
Yeah.
So culturally, we didn't talk about trust and wills. Now we need to, right? Because we now are starting to gain some traction. Why is it important? Is my grandmother just passed 2021.
Mm-hmm.
House was paid off in Santa Barbara, California, and you can imagine the size of the amount of equity she had. She owed nothing. House is a mile from the beach in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh yeah, that's worth a lot.
Yeah, her three sons had passed, which my father was one of them. All the grandkids, my grandmother had a trust because she knew she didn't trust the fact that we would all get along in her death. I don't need you fighting over my home. So she put her home into a trust. She put her assets into a trust. The reason why she did that, and then she basically had an attorney that was over that trust.
Okay.
That if anything ever happened, the trust has my words. This is, I want 5% going to this grandkid, I want 10% going to this one, whatever it was, whatever her wishes were, it's in this trust. And it cut out a lot of the, now there are some cousins that were a little upset about their percentage, but you never visited grandma. I mean, that's the way she felt, right?
Yeah.
So she died and she left an asset that we all can live off of. I remember my grandmother gave me my portion out of the home before she passed.
Mm-hmm.
Just gave me a check.
Yeah.
This lady didn't graduate college, but she had an asset. So, but what she did, but now I was one of the ones that got zero in that trust because she gave me mine prior to her passing. And so it created this ability for us not to fight and be emotional. Hey, this is grandma's words.
Yeah.
Legally, this is what you're getting. And what did that do? It kept the government, it kept the city, it kept people from coming and taking that house.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that my grandmother did, she was able to pass that down without somebody else taking that asset and using it, or the government taking it and auctioning it off to somebody else at, for the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to do it.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to remember anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are able-bodied, you got a checking account, a savings account, few $100, you own a home or you plan on a home, get you a will, start a trust, get an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say, well, I don't want to pay $500 to get somebody to create a trust or open up a will. It's the best thing that you can do for your family. It's the best thing. I felt comfortable doing. I was excited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talking about your death, and I'm able-bodied, I'm healthy. I was excited to tell my sons. I told my three sons. Again, with one eye open, like, I'm telling you about this.
Yeah.
I just want y'all to know if something ever happened, here's a safe. Here's the attorney's name, here's the financial advisor's name, and one other family member. They all know where all these things are. Mm-hmm. So I've basically prepared, because I ain't gonna die for another 50 or 60 years. But if in the event something happens, man, I don't want my family fighting, and I don't want my son's kids fighting over an asset that I fought to create for them.
Okay.
So that's the easy and the quick way. We can get into all the nuances, but as black folks and brown folks, we have to start talking about protecting our assets through insurance, wills, and trust. And we need to pay for it. There are people in our community that's what they do. So you need to find somebody that can do it. And people can always call me. I can forward you some folks and some names.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Thank you for that question, man. Because I think understanding banking, understanding equity, how to gain it, how does our community now start utilizing ways to build businesses, and, but how do we protect it when we're not here? Right? How do we protect it when we're not here? So that's a great question for your audience. Some people out there have already got that, but if you're not, think about it. Because if you're working your butt off and you pass, I was talking to somebody at a spot that we both know about. Had a great dinner with this individual. She is 25 years old.
Okay.
My oldest son's age, and she's got a will. She got a $1 million life insurance policy. I said, "You're 25. Well, why do you have a life insurance policy? You're 25 years old." She said, "I not only got $1 million policy, I have a $500,000 policy, but you don't have any kids." Again, this is me as an older man asking somebody why, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was talking more of a cash flow standpoint, like,
why
are you spending this? She did a whole life policy. It's a whole nother where she can borrow from her policy. It's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But she said, she's got 8 siblings. She said, I came out of a rough situation, and if I pass, I want to make sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah.
How mature mentally.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking at that place. She's like, if I pass, I want to make sure that they're taken care of. I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not trust, wills, life insurance isn't just for old folks like me. Young folks need to be thinking about it too, because you can take care of whoever you want to.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. Because I had this conversation actually with my dad the other day, and I know I was just like, I was like, Dad, I was like, we can, get one for you and Mom, and then he was like, you need to think about you too. I was like, yeah, you're right. I said, we both need to get one actually. So it's not, and you're right. She was 25, she got hers. I'm 29. And,
it's time. It's time. Yeah.
Because like as a homeowner myself, you don't want that to just kind of go to the wayside, to probate court, and and it's just up for grabs. You never know what can happen with that. So that stuff is important. And really quickly, if you could just give a quick distinction between a will versus a trust, because some people are like hearing these words, but they may not know what a simple distinction between those two.
A will actually is like my final wishes. Like it is, I want to give you, $50,000 of my assets. The will is actually called a kind of action when I die.
Okay.
The trust basically is the governance of who's going to be the person that dictates, where are these funds going to be allocated. And so a trust and a will, they do a slow dance together. The trust is kind of over and it can have all your assets in. The will is kind of your last will and testament, what you want dictated with the assets. The trust is governing the giving out of the assets once that person. So that's the kind of the difference between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
cool.
It's a slow dance. If you get a will, you definitely want your trust as well.
No, that makes sense. So, but yeah, and really quick, we're gonna close soon, but I wanted to talk about, and I'm glad that we had this conversation now about this whole bank failure, switching topics. We've seen that with Silicon Valley Bank and a couple other banks have recently failed now. What's the implications of first, what is a bank failure? What does that mean when we talk about bank failure?
When a bank fails,
okay,
in the the SVB bank in California, that basically failed within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And the reason why is people started pulling. It was basically a run on the bank. People started pulling their money because they felt like there was some kind of concern, right? But when a bank doesn't have, when you deposit your check or you deposit your cash into the bank, we take that cash and that's how we make loans. Well, if you have no money in the bank, if a bank has no money, because the way they earn, their bottom line is through interest. Credit card interest, car loan interest, mortgage interest, fee income. When you come and you got to pay $500 to get a car loan, that goes to the bottom line.
Gotcha.
So if you can't lend any money with deposit because everybody's pulled that money out, your bank fails.
Wow.
And the thing about SVB in Southern California, Silicon Valley Bank, it's in Silicon Valley. is that it was a tech bank. So they did a lot of their deposits were from 75% of them from the tech industry. Okay.
Yeah.
So they did a great, I mean, you think about all the tech startups and all that, that was the bank that they went to. Hey, you know, if you say, hey, my homie, hey, look, you trying to start a tech firm, go to that bank. So they were making all these loans. They were doing a great job, right? But as things started winding down, it was one whisper, and bam, everybody said, tech firms, they're quick. They pulled their money. People started pulling their money.
Wow.
They had no ability to lend. They went below their reserve requirement, and that bank failed. Right.
Yeah.
So it was a crisis of confidence.
Wow.
Wasn't mainly an issue of structure. It was a crisis. Okay, where's the economy going? People started whispering. Bam, money got drawn out, and so that's what happened. So when a bank fails, means people have. When you hear run on bank, and you kind of came out and you heard the federal government saying, hey, everything's fine with our system. The FDIC said, you know, if you have you started hearing all this. If you don't have more than if you have less than 250,000 or less, your money is completely insured by the federal government. So if you got a checking account and you got, $10,000 in your account or $5,000, your money's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're a major firm and you got millions in there, well, anything above 250, that money's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So that can cripple companies. Right.
Yeah.
So when companies, if I'm a tech firm, and I got $1 million with you, hey, I love the fact that you lent me the money. I got to pull. Is there some problem? Let me start pulling my money because I know only 250,000 of that is covered.
Wow.
If I've got 10 million in that bank, only $250,000 covered, and my cash reserves are in that bank. I'm pulling it.
Yeah.
If I think there's any hint, I'm pulling my cash. Right.
Yeah.
Again, these are my words. This isn't any bank. I'm not a bank regulator or anything like that. But that's the fundamental issue when a bank fails.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember like reading and like understanding about like different reserve ratios and stuff like that. You gotta, like some banks were like having like 10% ratios or 20%, and some went as low as 0%. Yeah. Like having a cash reserve ratio of 0%. I feel like that's risky, but but that's a whole different discussion for another day.
That's a long.
That's a long discussion.
I can take that in a political direction too.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. You're right. So to your point, there's, it's a very salient thought by even saying that is that every bank that you have your money in, the federal government requires you to have, especially depending on the size of the bank, you have to have a certain amount of money in reserves. So people, you can't lend out this reserve amount because if you get into the reserves, you can start crippling your company. So the federal government has a certain threshold for your bank, my bank, whoever bank, that they can't lend these reserves. Period. And so that's basically what it is. So you haven't really heard much more about banks failing. Credit Suisse in Switzerland. I mean, everybody's heard of Credit Suisse. They got taken over by Deutsche Bank because they were having a crisis of confidence. People started pulling money and all that. So you have other banks now jumping in quickly saying, hey, our banking system is good. We'll go ahead and buy you. We're going to bail you out quickly. If anything was taught by 2008 during the crisis, the financial crisis, is that banks got together and had to rescue themselves. I will tell you the fundamentals of banking now, the concern about the mortgage industry or crashing or a bank failing, the fundamentals of banking and finance now are stronger than they've ever been. So I'm highly confident that our system is still going to be intact even through this. So
okay, and so question that we kind of have two closing questions. One is if you look at your life like a house, what is your house? What is your life? What does it stand on? What's a foundational pillar?
Man, the foundational pillar, everything that I stand on, man, that's a good question, man. The true main value for me is making sure that I understand sharing. And sharing, what I mean by that is making sure that each one teach one. The knowledge that I gain. So when you asked about coming and, we talked about doing the podcast. I love to speak. I go out. I think that I've got to share. I feel like at the end of the day, this is not just us. We're not on this earth by ourselves. And that for us to be able to connect, we definitely need to make sure we share information, our knowledge, resources. What are we here for? So that's my foundation. When I wake up every day, I feel like, man, I've got to share not only my knowledge, it's what I do, it's how I get paid, but in my free time, and I rack up charity hours, making sure that I pass. And I don't feel like it's charity because it's kind of the foundational base of who I am.
Yeah.
So that's my base. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And the very last question is question of the day. We ask something that has nothing to do with what we discuss, and that random question is, of all time, who is your favorite Sacramento Kings player? Since you're from Sacramento.
Man, I have to say Webber, man.
Chris Webber.
I'm gonna be honest with you right now. De'Aaron Fox is he's moving up that board, man.
Yeah.
Just for the audience that doesn't know, I am a Sacramento Kings fan. I am proud. I'm prideful of that.
Yeah.
And we've had a drought for over 20 years of getting into the playoffs. So we made the playoffs. Yesterday, we clinched a playoff berth thanks to De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
So I love Webber, but De'Aaron Fox is getting pretty close, man.
Yeah.
But what I do love is the fact that Mike Brown, who sat at the feet of Steve Kerr, got ran out of Cleveland, years ago when LeBron was there, is getting redemption.
Yeah.
He's doing a great job, Mike Brown. So
he is. And that stadium is beautiful too.
The stadium?
Oh man, goodness.
It's an amazing
high
stadium.
tech.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, all of downtown has been transformed. Sacramento's been transformed by the Golden One. So that is not a plug for Golden One Bank, by the way. But it's a great arena, man. But listen, man, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you again.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
And for all the people who tune in today, we was wondering how do we reach you? Like, for people out there who's like, I want to get in contact. Is there email? Is there Instagram? Whatever.
Yeah, it's
what do you feel comfortable with?
Damien.Gilbert75@gmail. Damien.Gilbert DAMIN.Gilbert75@gmail. I can't give out my work email, but I'm D Gill the Banker on IG. DGILL the Banker on IG. So those are the best ways people get with me. The only reason I can't say the bank because I would have had to go through legal and all that.
We
and I
don't
just didn't want to go through all that. So, not that I don't love my company.
Of course. But anyways, thank you all for tuning into this episode. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you. We love you, and we'll see you in the next episode. And don't forget, if you have not already, because 80% of y'all watching this on YouTube have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you soon. Peace.